on the Summit website. So welcome everybody. My name's Daughter. I'm from the Zero Waste Network and we are hosting this, our Zero Waste World Summit this year. It's been a really fun few days. We had our AGM and networking drinks in Wellington yesterday alongside the panel discussions, and I have been really enjoying connecting with people all around New Zealand and in person in Wellington and also internationally as well. So this session is about zero waste culture. I am going to take this opportunity to just thank my amazing Zero Waste Network board. We've got a couple of them involved in the session today, but it's yeah, they're a really amazing group of people, and I feel super supported and thankful to have all of your great brains involved. And one of them today is going to lead this session, so that's Green John Morgan. You've been on the board for like 4 or something years now, Green John, eh? Green John has been working in the space for several years, working for McLaren Park Henderson South, and set up their organisation that operates at the Henderson transfer station, the tipping point. So he knows lots of this stuff kind of from a real grassroots level. And I am very, very honoured to have him take over the session. So I'll hand it over to you, Green John, and I'll come back at the end and do some things like thanking our sponsors and just kind of finishing off the event before we ask Jackie to give a final karakia to end the event. So you'll hear from me again later. Over to you, Green John.
Hey, thank you, Daughter, and welcome everyone. Kia ora koutou katoa, haere mai. Yeah, welcome to the space. Really lovely to have you here. Before we start the event, I'm just going to hand over to our friend and colleague Jackie, who is going to give us a mihi. And thank you, Jackie.
Kia ora, Green John. Tuatahi ka mihi ki te rungarawa ki te wāhi ngaro nāna nei ngā mea katoa. First of all, acknowledgements to the higher realms and to the lost place from which everything, the essence of everything comes. Heki iho ki o tātou tupuna kua haere ki tua o te ārai ki ngā mate haere moi mai rā. Then we mihi to and acknowledge those that have died and passed on, and they've gone back to the true home, and they're, you know, they won't return, and our love for them will never end. Ka mihi kia rangi e tūnei, kia papa tuanuku e taku tōnei. Acknowledgements to Rangi Nui, the Sky Father, and Papa Tuanuku, the Earth Mother. Kāti kia tātou te hunga ora e takahi nei I te mata o te whenua, tēnā tātou katoa. To us that are still living, the living faces on the surface of Papa Tuanuku, greetings and acknowledgements. Ka mihi kia koe, Daughter, te kai whakahaere o te wānanga nei. Greetings to you, Daughter, who is organising this summit. Kia koe hoki, Green John, mō tō whakahaere I tēnei wāhanga, and to you too, Green John, for this part. Me te mihi nui rawa atu kia koutou kua tatu mai ki te whakarongo ki ngā pahupahu. And me te mihi hoki ki ngā kai kōrero no ngā hauwha. Big mihi to the speakers today from the Four Winds, and to everyone that has come along to listen to the kōrero today. Me karakia tātou, so our karakia. Tākiri ko te ata, kōrehi ko te manu. He manu korori, he manu korora. Kōrero tia mai no tua whakarere. Nau mai I te ao, haere rā I te pō. E hia ki ana te ata, kura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu. So the birds are singing different types of birds. The night has passed, a new dawn, a new day. There's the dew of the morning to take us forward into this day. Nō reira, tūturu whakamaua kia tīna, haumi hui tai. Kia ora.
Thank you, Jackie. That was beautiful. Yeah, welcome everyone. Welcome to our guest speakers, Liam, Jackie, Paul, and Alana. And yeah, thank you to our facilitators, Daughter and Izzy. Also like to acknowledge our partners and supporters, Auckland Council, Waste Not Consulting, Rothbury, Vision, Gaia, and the Zero Waste International Alliance. So our session today, zero waste is frequently thought of as a white middle-class movement involving expensive, time-consuming, plastic-free lifestyle choices. However, the current take, make, waste model has been imported and imposed on people around the world because it is extremely profitable. Indigenous peoples and majority world societies have long practiced zero waste out of necessity. At the same time, such people and communities often stereotyped as being less concerned about the environment, despite being on the sites of toxic resource extraction, dumping grounds for wealthier place. Moreover, zero waste advocates have often been righteous crusaders who ignore the very real needs of specific communities for single-use products that make functioning easier, demanding wholesale bans on products without regard to these people. Mm-hmm. We know that achieving zero waste will involve large changes to the social, economic, and political structures we live in, and the behaviour of groups and individuals. How do we do that in a way that is inclusive and seeks to remedy inequalities? What is the relationship between the zero waste movement and Te Tiriti o Waitangi? The panel will explore a range of perspectives from practitioners across Aotearoa and the Pacific on what's needed to develop a strong zero waste culture, looking at some of the initiatives they've been involved in and the key learnings that they've made on their zero waste journey. So our plan for today is that we're going to do a quick intro from each speaker, and then we'll have some prepared questions for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to go to the audience's questions, and then we'll have a little bit of a wrap up. So the people. Our panelists, first of all, we have Paul Brown, who's from the Disabled Persons Assembly, New Zealand. Paul Brown is a policy advisor with the Disabled Persons Assembly and is New Zealand's only pan-impairment disabled persons organisation. Paul is a disabled person who has worked in the disability field for over 25 years. As well as working in the disability sector, Paul is a disability and community activist. Paul has been interested in issues of zero waste and disability for a few years, especially when the Auckland branch of the Blind Citizens New Zealand put together a book called Feeling Rubbish, a guide to reducing waste for blind and vision impaired Aucklanders. As well as the guide, the Auckland branch of the Blind Citizens produced 2 rubbish rings to enable blind and vision impaired people to sort recycling by touch. Paul wants to challenge the culture around zero waste and disability. We need to enable disabled people to come up with innovative ways of reducing waste, and we need to help zero waste organisations to think about inclusion and disability. I'll just hand over to you, Paul, if there's something you'd like to add, or if you'd just like to make a comment about where your community and yourself sit right at the moment.
Kia ora. Well, here you go. Here's a rubbish ring. This is for composite rubbish, so you can't recycle it. This one is for soft plastics, which can be recycled at the supermarket. And I guess I'm starting there because a lot of blind people have felt that things have been pretty difficult in terms of recycling. We hear the mantra, the message all the time, but you know, there are various coloured bins for this, that, and the next thing. Coloured glass goes in here, non-coloured glass goes in there. You know, there's some symbols on the bottom of things. How do you do it? And I think that, so we ourselves at Blind Citizens, with a grant from Auckland Council's Waste Management Fund, decided to kind of take it into our own hands. And and we couldn't find anything elsewhere that really looked at how blind people do that. You know, as a blind young woman, I mean, unless anyone shows you a moon cup, you ain't going to know that one exists. So I think for a lot of disabled people, there's a real lack of information, a real lack of how do we do this? You know, some disabled people, because of their impairments or because of their living situation, don't sort their own rubbish. Somebody else does it. And so how do they actually get into doing that? How do they get the information? I think that in terms of the zero waste movement, there hasn't been as much interaction with disability community as there might be. Although I think that's starting to change. Here in New Zealand, we've had contact around one of the big issues for us, which is coming up in our new zero kind of waste type legislation, which is around the use of plastic straws. And it's great that the zero waste community has reached out to us. So for many disabled people, there aren't yet alternatives, you know, and if you've got a bite reaction, a metal straw's not really going to do it, you know. So we have been aware in other countries of disabled people being abused, verbally abused in cafes and stuff for using straws, and we don't want that to happen here. We want people to get them if they need them and some way of doing that. And it's great that actually kind of zero waste people around that contacted us at the Disabled Persons Assembly to talk about that, so we're singing from the same song sheet. So I think we're at an interesting period where maybe the zero waste movement and the disabled people's movement are kind of starting to come together here in New Zealand and internationally to look at innovative ways of how we work together. So I'm quite optimistic that there's starting to be a bit of a change there. So yeah, cool.
Okay, thank you, Paul. It's great to hear that you are feeling positive about that. I'll just add, I have two feathers here. I'm very fortunate to live next to the forest of Turiwa, and this was a gift from Kahu, our native falcon, and this is a gift from Aotearoa, our native pigeon. So if you do start to get over or lose track on time, I'll start waving these, but I'll also give you a visual, an audio cue for help. So next, I'm going to introduce Alana Matamaru Smith, who currently lives in the beautiful Rarotonga Cook Islands. And she works for an NGO, Te Aipokaria Society, been there for 5 years. They have 5 strategic areas that they work in. Waste management has been a busy focal point, particularly with the Cook Islands being once an economically driven and booming tourist industry. And we hope that does revive soon. Through Alana's work, she has worked closely with the local schools, raising awareness on how they can better manage their waste. Alana has witnessed the pressures of their one and only landfill and the environmental consequences of dumping. Alana is a recent master's graduate in conservation biology from Victoria University here in New Zealand, and an undergraduate student in environmental management from Otago in New Zealand, who now enjoys the beautiful warmth of the Cook Islands. So Alana, over to you.
Thank you, Green. Kia ora, everybody. So I've got a quick little presentation, I suppose, just to go with my introduction to you all today. So I hope that you can see this.
Yes.
We got the A. Okay, great. So, yep, as mentioned, I've been based in for 5 years now, working for an environmental non-government organisation, Te Pukaria Society. And of our 5 focal areas, waste management has been one of our biggest areas that we've had to work in, particularly with our once booming tourism industry that we had here in the Cooks. We really started to feel the pressures of the tourism industry and the waste department. But not only that, you know, the day-to-day practices that we as local Cook Islanders would lead and our values and morals towards our waste as well was all areas that we still need to work on here in the Cooks. So part of what we do here is really try to get in tune and working with our young generations, our youth, today. We feel like this is a great avenue to get the awareness raising out there to our youth, and we see changes in them. We feel like they're our promising future, where, you know, they go home and they end up telling their parents, they see their mum or dad throwing rubbish on the fire, and they'll be like, no, mum, that's not the way to go. So, you know, they're being teachers in themselves with this information that we share onto our youth. So a lot of awareness raising work that we've been doing in the Aotearoa Society. We've been really fortunate to some of our practices, campaigns that we've done this year is the Plastic Free July, another successful way of getting more messages out to our people. And through this, we actually saw a lot of local businesses jumped on board and wanted to get involved. I guess they saw it also as a marketing platform for them as well. Like our coffee shops making the switch to jam jars, bring your own reusable jam jars. But it was a month of real good stuff where our business got on board to show that, you know, that we can make these simple swaps. Other areas, you know, well, this is a shot actually of our one and only landfill that we have on the right side here. It's actually reached its full capacity at the moment. We're at the point where we're having to stack our rubbish into bales, and we're making rubbish pyramids at the moment. Land is a massive issue here in the Cooks. We don't have enough land to have another landfill. So we're forced to make these rubbish pyramids that we have. I guess, you know, we're now at the point where we're having to also lobby our government into potentially banning particular types of waste that we can bring here into the Cooks to really try and stop some of these rubbish that we can't recycle. We can't properly recycle here in the Cook Islands. So as well as our grassroots programs that we have going in our schools, we also, you know, see the powers of our top-down approaches and really trying to get our government to make some changes to help this whole process of trying to go zero waste. So I shall leave it there for now, and if you have any more questions later on.
Awesome, thank you, Alana. It's always one thing that used to strike us in environmental restoration, just how much the young kids understood their connection to nature, and how we sadly seem to lose that the older we get, which is odd. Liam Prince. Liam has lived with a rubbish-free bin, without a rubbish bin, for over 5 years alongside his partner, Hannah, and together they created the Rubbish Trip to share their experience and knowledge of zero waste living throughout Aotearoa, New Zealand. Interesting, I had to remind Liam before the session that we had met, and when we went zero waste in our home, we used the Rubbish Trip extensively to figure out where we're going to shop and what we're going to use things. And when we met him at a gathering at a friend's place, I felt a bit starstruck. You know, Liam is a bit of a hero in the zero waste movement. So quickly told my partner Margaret, "Oh, Liam and Hannah are here. We're so excited." Anyway, Liam is also the co-founder and event spokesman for the Takeaway Throwaways campaign, deputy chair of the Aotearoa Plastic Pollution Alliance, and last but not least, a professional jazz drummer and composer. He's currently teaching musicology at Massey University and is interested in the roles and responsibility that musicians, the music industry, and the arts in general have in helping to tackle any global ecological issues, crises. Yeah. You, Liam?
Kia ora, John. Yeah, thanks so much for that intro and for that little connecting story. It's so cool to hear the influence we've had. But yeah, thanks so much also to Zero Waste Network for just putting this all together, to Daughter and Izzy and everyone behind the scenes. It's really awesome. And yeah, it's a privilege to be speaking on what I think is a really important topic. So I'll just share my screen. So yeah, as Paul mentioned, as Green John mentioned, I'm involved in a range of campaigns. And I think it's just, I'd just like to quickly note that, you know, inclusivity and accessibility and recognizing the connections between environmental and social justice is really important for the work that we do in all of these spaces. For example, with the Aotearoa Plastic Pollution Alliance, we released a statement in support of Black Lives Matter a few months ago. With takeaway throwaways, we have an inclusivity policy, which was developed in consultation with the disabled community. So I think it's really important that work in this space considers lots of different aspects, social as well as environmental. But my contribution to the kōrero today is around gender representation. And to set the scene for this conversation, I'm one of 2 men out of 9 upper committee members, and I'm also the only male out of 4 who run the Takeaway Throwaways campaign. And I think that this underrepresentation of men is fairly common in this space. And I think it raises questions around fairness, like who is it that's doing the majority of the mahi to address the, ecological crisis that we all contribute to and that we all also are affected by. Now, it's not to say that there aren't a bunch of awesome male advocates for zero waste, and actually we've seen a really cool representation of that at the summit. But I think the absence of men's voices in this space is really apparent when we talk about zero waste lifestyle change. Which is the work that I do with the rubbish trip with my partner Hannah. So we support people to reduce waste in their own lives. And so basically with the rubbish trip, we've traveled all over New Zealand for the past 3 years. And we've given over 400 presentations and workshops about how people can reduce their waste. And I can quite confidently say that on average, our audiences are probably around 80% female. And funnily enough, the only time we had a majority male audience was when we did a talk at an engineering firm, which I think says more about engineering than interest in zero waste, probably. Also, these numbers are reflected in our social media. So on the left there, you can see our followers, 88% women, 10% men. And the people we reach is a little bit high, 22% men. It's a little bit higher, but still very low. So not even the Facebook algorithms are working for us. The big question really is, why is this the case? Oh, and also just, it's not just us, it's not just the rubbish trip. Zero Waste in New Zealand on Facebook, very similar stats, 84.6% female members. Yeah. So why is this the case? I mean, actually, if you look at who are the people who are representing the zero waste sort of lifestyle change, putting themselves out there to encourage people to reduce waste in their own lives, it is, again, predominantly women. And, all of the women in these photos are New Zealanders, and it is a global issue as well. But I really, you'd be hard pressed to find a handful of men who are sort of out there publicly talking about these sorts of lifestyles. So why is this the case? Unfortunately, I don't have any definitive answers as to why women are leading this, but just more questions like, is it to do with stereotypical gender roles of women traditionally and still the case doing the majority of domestic work like cooking and cleaning, or is it that individual action is seen as some sort of threat to masculinity? There's actually some really interesting consumer research out there about men are often much more concerned about upholding their gender identity through their purchasing decisions, and also for some reason environmentally friendly or green purchasing decisions are seen as effeminate, which is a little bit confusing for me. The other thing too is, if we recognize this as an issue, then how do we actually get more men on board with this? Do we need to make our messaging more masculine, or do we actually just need to try and decouple environmental action from gender stereotypes, so that it's actually not a challenge to masculinity to be seen to care about taking action? Because no big deal, but the environment's just the thing that helps us be alive, right? And be well. Why should it be effeminate that to be seen to care about clean water and clean kai and clean soil and all that sort of stuff? And just to quickly wrap it up, I do acknowledge I'm a cisgender heterosexual man, and I've talked about this issue in a very binary way. So there is it's important to have a conversation around representation and acknowledging gender diversity and zero waste. And I'm probably not the best person to speak to that. But I do think that the lack of men in this space is a very real problem. And I think getting more men accepting and being willing to take action in this space would really do a lot to normalize zero waste culture. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Liam. Hopefully we'll get time to flesh that out a little bit more. Jackie Forbes. Jackie has worked within the waste industry, in particular the community recycling sector with Extreme Zero Waste from 2004 to 2016. This work involved management, waste auditing, community education and behaviour change, zero waste events and more. There's always more, Jackie. Jackie is now the General Manager for Parekure, a waste education project that started as a pilot with 3 marae and today is an organisation delivering waste education to more than 380 marae and organisations throughout Aotearoa. Jackie has relationships based on waste management with over 70 iwi community groups and council partners who contribute to Parekure's mission. And I'd just like to say about Jackie, she works from the grassroots community right up to central government. And I'm always impressed at the integrity she works with in such a kind and compassionate way. So I hope we can all emulate some of that, Jackie. Over to you.
Kia ora, Green John. And I think Daughter might be putting some slides up for me. If she does, that's cool.
Okay, I am doing that right now.
Yeah. So
okay.
We, as John said, I work for Parekure, which is an organisation that was started in 2008, and it was the Waikato Regional Council that was inviting myself as a kaimahi from Extreme Zero Waste to talk about marae recycling. And what happened from there is that I was asked to put in an application to the Sustainable Management Fund. In 2010, in November, so 10 years ago, we became our own incorporated society. And over the years, we have received funding from the Waste Minimisation Fund to expand the program into new regions. So we have 17 regional advisors delivering the program throughout the North Island. So next slide, please, Daughter. And our vision is oranga taiao, oranga marae, oranga whānau. So a healthy environment, healthy marae and communities, healthy families. So we don't put ourselves into silos. For us, Parekure is a health kaupapa, ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata, ka ora te tangata, ka ora te whenua. So healthy people, healthy environment, healthy people. And next slide, please, Daughter. And we deliver our waste education from a Māori worldview, and so we're working towards a world without waste. And so teaching from that framework of Te Ao Māori, brings to the forefront our Māori Indigenous values shared, by all cultures of whakapapa, whanaungatanga, manaakitanga. So whakapapa and whanaungatanga, the interconnectedness that we all have, not only with our families and our communities, but also with the natural world. Understanding that we are, we didn't come from Jupiter or Pluto. We're not visitors here. We are all from planet Earth. This is our home. So, and we are related to all the other millions of species that exist on this planet. We are a part of that circle of life. And next slide, please, Daughter. And so I guess over the years, we have been, we call it the bottom of the cliff, helping people to deal with the waste that they have. So setting up composting systems and recycling systems to deal with that. But we're really excited to turn our focus going forward onto top of the cliff solutions, such as cloth nappy programs, helping kohanga reo and early childhood centres to change from using disposable plastic nappies to exclusive use of cloth nappies, for wānanga for women, and more education about food sovereignty and supporting the development of local food production, as well as getting all our education available online. So that's just a little snapshot, I guess, of the work we do, and we work with nearly 500 marae organisations, events, sports clubs, workplaces, throughout the north and top of the South Island. Kia ora, tātou.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay, so now we're going to go into the questions, and the first question I have is for all of you to comment on if you'd like to. So developing a culture starts with knowing our people and what it is that they are aiming for. What are some of the most important things for your community, and how does zero waste fit in with their vision? And then also, how does this create a thriving zero waste culture? Could I start with you, Liam?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've been people I've been working with in the last year or so have been really pushing for, I notice has been happening lately in the zero waste space, is just acknowledging that we need to be talking more and we need to be collaborating more. I feel like, I mean, it's not just a waste issue, but a lot of sectors kind of do their mahi, do their work in their space, and and don't see a lot of other issues that surround that interconnect with the work they're doing. So I think that's happening a lot more, which I think Paul sort of briefly mentioned, recognizing that there's an increasing conversation between different sectors, and I think it's really, really important, because we don't, this movement has got to be something that is sensitive to all people's needs, and it's not just about, as we all know, it's not just about the planet, it's about people as well and supporting people. So I think that increasing collaboration is something that all the people I've been working with are really pushing more for. So yeah, more of that.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. We hate duplication as well, don't we? Paul, could I go for you for some comments on that?
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I think Liam's absolutely right, and it is where I started. I think about needing to be inclusive and to be talking to each other. It is about people. I think for the disability community, a couple of things that I've already touched on. One is about lack of information. I think is a huge issue, and I think the other is for some people is about, there's no vacuums here, things are interconnected. So funding, so if you're only going to get funded for certain products, certain kind of, pads or pull up pants or whatever, that's what you get. And so you may want to be zero waste, but the kind of system, doesn't always allow for that. And I think we need to think about how we work together to impact the system to make sure that disabled people can have some real choices around this stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Jackie, would you like me to read the question again, or are you good?
It's about what's happening at present for us in our community.
No, developing a culture starts with knowing our people and what they're aiming for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So same kind of thing. I guess for us, the fact of the matter is that our people are facing inequity. So the Tiriti partnership that was agreed hasn't been honoured, and this loss of alienation from land and legislation over time has, caused real a situation that's really difficult for Māori people, for our people. So when we're working with people, we need to be aware of, we need to be aware of where they're at, and we also want to use like our organisation to support. We'd love to nudge everyone towards constitutional transformation. I know that it's not going to happen in the next couple of years, but wherever we're working and in the spaces that we're working, we really want to uphold those principles of honouring the tiriti.
Thank you. Okay, Alana, would you like to talk us through that?
Yeah, so I guess we're very fortunate here in the Cook Islands, here on the Rarotonga. We're not in the big smoke, I suppose, in the cities. So I feel like we have more of a connection to our land and our environment here. So that passion to look after our environment is there amongst our people. But with time, we have had old habits that have just stuck with our culture. And those old habits go from burning of rubbish because it's the most convenient thing to do. It's the easiest thing to do. It's out of sight, out of mind. And then, we like our big kaikais, we like our family kaikais, so with the food involved, and then the glad wraps. It's another convenience for our people to quickly glad wrap our foods. And, just moving away from that, is areas that, our people just need to work on,
Yeah, thank you, Alana. So the next question I'm thinking of particularly for Alana and Jackie. So I know it's one of the things that really helps me is that our Indigenous culture is able to express our relationship with nature in a very deep way. And my own culture has some barriers to doing that. There's some beautiful words and just ways of expressing things. So I'm wondering, Alana and Jackie, if you could give us some examples or talk to us around that, of how culture can lead us to a greater appreciation of nature, and also how we can elevate that thinking into other cultures. Jackie.
Okay, so one thing about Te Ao Māori is that we see ourselves connected not only with the people here and now, but we also feel that connection with our tūpuna and also with our tamariki and mokopuna. So we're connected in our stories and in our songs. We're always talking about those that have gone on before us, and we're always aspiring to work hard and to serve and follow the pathways that have been set for us by our ancestors. And when we're working, we're always striving to, we're thinking about the next generations, which you could call intergenerational justice. And we're always thinking about the next generations and how we can be good ancestors and lead and do better by them. So I guess that's one way, just that not only the connectedness with the landforms and the other species and the waterways, but also that interconnectedness through time. And that's about manaakitanga and aroha as well. So it's about caring and taking the responsibility to manaaki your children and your grandchildren. Just a few comments on that.
To you, Alana.
So yes, very much the same as our neighbouring sister island, New Zealand. We also have the same values. We call it manatiaki. And that's basically, you know, we have this responsibility. We are each guardians of caretakers, and in this case of our land that we live on, our resources that we have, and what we do today, our practices we do today has to be in a caretaking way so that we pave out a sustainable future for our future generations, for those that will take on the next chapter of this life. And that value is instilled in each and every one of us. But yeah, as I said, you know, there's still these little creeks that are starting to trickle in, these avenues for convenience, and yeah, areas that we still need to squash out and work on as a community.
Thank you. And we talked a little bit about how we accept differences between people. And Paul, even when I was thinking about this question, I sort of thought about the labels we give people, and sometimes it just is the easiest thing to do. You know, we talk about people with disabilities or children with special needs, and maybe this can be sensitive to some people. Maybe they just accept it, that this is the way it is. But still, it is labeling, it is categorizing people. And I'm wondering, how do we support marginalized people in being more connected and feeling like they are just, we're all together, we're all one part?
Thanks. I mean, we are all one part, I guess, but we all do have unique and individual needs, I guess. And for me, I think it's about kind of cooperation, collaboration between disabled persons organisations, so those organisations that run and controlled by disabled people, organisations that the UN Disability Convention recognises have a kind of special status because they speak on behalf of disabled people, because they are our organisations. I think it's about them coming together with kind of zero waste and climate justice organisations, you know, in order to kind of work together to talk about what some of the real issues are. I mean, as I say, the plastic straws one's been an interesting one, you know, because obviously for many disabled people, huge issue. What do we do about it? You know, you know, until somebody invents something much better and more environmentally friendly, there will be people who require these, and you know, not because people don't want to change stuff. So I think it is just about working together with disability organisations, with disabled people's organisations, and climate kind of justice organisations, kind of working together, getting to know each other, you know, not being afraid to have the hard discussions, the hard chats. It isn't always easy and straightforward. We know that, you know, and the fact that some people would like to make changes, but there are various barriers to that. So I guess we can concentrate on the problems, or we can work with people on where they're at and actually, you know, look at, you know, the things that folk can do.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Yeah. Let's talk, and let's make sure we make time to talk. Seems to be everyone's under time pressure as well.
Yeah, sure.
Liam, so you've talked about this gender participation, and I know we can get into some real generalities here that we kind of have a little bit of fear of. I don't know if you do, maybe you don't. That I was sort of thinking when you were talking that at the CRCs we do have a lot of men who participate, and I often think it's kind of a little bit about how we frame their work. We may have somebody who's called a digger operator, but really I think their title would be better, that they were a zero waste operator. And at the end of the day, rather than them going home and saying, oh, I operated my digger, that they went home and saying, hey, I diverted 4 tons of rubbish today, and I do that every day. You know, so have you had thoughts about that, of how we frame things?
I'm still here. I'm really sorry my internet is a bit shaky, but I got most of your question, I think. Yeah, I think there's a bit of a balance between, I sort of alluded to it in my intro, that between not sort of feeding stereotypes, but also recognizing that, you know, people do have different identities and different, different roles and whatever in the work that they do. And I think, yeah, I think in some ways I feel like we've got to try to cater to both things. And you know, what I think, one thing I think would really support people or encourage people to relate to issues around taking action and waste would be to see more role models that they can relate to just see people out there who are, you know, like I am who I am, and some people are going to listen to me and some people are just going to write me off, you know, from the get-go sort of thing. But if we had more people, you know, if we had business leaders, if we had farmers, and if we had mechanics, digger drivers and stuff who are out there and saying, yeah, this is, you know, this is just what I do, and I care about this stuff, then, you know, I think a lot more people will relate to it. And I think at the same time, yeah, just being careful around not reinforcing those stereotypes that potentially, like I think especially with the gender issue, that sort of reinforce the sort of masculine, oh, I don't care, you know, it's not cool, or it's not manly to care about this stuff, and you know, I'm not sort of bothered about stuff I do around the home, and that's, you know, that's women's work, you know, so there's a bit of a fine balance, I think, sometimes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Liam. Alana, I've sort of been thinking a bit about what you've said about that little bit of a trap that we can get into when we're working with our people, that we sort of see them doing some things that we're not okay with, but we also need to appreciate that we need to cultivate the long-term growth, and how we go about that can be very difficult. So there's a statement I came across, and you're probably aware of many similar statements, that people, not carbon emissions or waste, should be the heart of our work. So I'm wondering what you think about that type of statement, and how do we balance the need of our people against the need of our planet?
Yeah, it's a good one, Green. I think here in the Cook Islands, you know, nobody wants to be that rubbish police. We live in a very small community, so how, you know, we can sort of normalize it in a way where we're not being that person that's being like, no, you can't do this, that, or the other. And we've thought a bit more about how we can go about this, and we thought try to bring more of a humorous side into how we can change these mindsets and attitudes to normalize it through that avenue. That could potentially be one way forward for our community here in the Cook Islands. So something we're going to definitely try and put out to our people through different campaigns, advertising campaigns, social media campaigns, just to get that next step being the normal step in zero waste.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not sure if I answered your statement though. I forgot what your statement was.
No, that's quite all right. Jackie, would you like to comment further on that? I know, you know, you may strike that in Marais, that Marais may have a particular way of doing things that on the face of it may look environmentally not so good. Yeah, is that a challenge?
Yeah, I guess where I come from is, you know, I don't believe that even though we're providing waste education here, there, everywhere, I don't believe that what's fundamentally required is for us to provide enough education to change consumer, you know, behaviour, and to educate how to deal with waste that's generated. And that's because we are within a certain paradigm that enables this linear take, make, throw away system to operate. And our whole economic system is built on creating waste. So for me, it's like it's this whole system that we need to smash to pieces, because it's based on taking natural resources, making stuff, and then throwing it away. And there's no education that's going to, you know, change that. It's a whole way of thinking that's not based on interconnectedness and our place within the family of the diversity of life that exists on Papatūānuku. So, you know, we are the tainer, the younger sibling, and so we have responsibilities to other species. Yeah, so it's, to me, it's you know, companies can produce whatever they want, products and packaging, and take no responsibility, and that's going to shift a little bit in the coming years. But that's I just feel like I mean, we can all do things differently. So, but just as much emphasis that's been put on people to do things differently, that same amount of emphasis must be put on the companies that are producing the products and the packaging.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I'm getting coming through from our session is this need to make changes, or the need to change. And as a change advocate myself, I'm very comfortable with change and I actually love it. But I often get into trouble over that because a lot of people aren't. A lot of people feel stability and staying in their place. That's where they're nurtured and feel comfortable. So, you know, how do we develop a culture where change is acceptable and change feels safe? Liam, could I go to you for that?
Yeah. Yeah, again, I think I would say, you know, having more conversations like we're having today, where we're actually talking across and connecting between different perspectives, but also, yeah, change to get change, but change the conversation, and to tautoko what some of the things Jackie was saying before, and sort of in response to your previous question as well, that often it feels like supporting people and doing things right for the planet are seen in opposition, but you know, it's all connected really, and I think we need to try to challenge that it's one or the other, but actually we can be taking action, and we can create a system, and we can that doesn't treat environmental action as separate from supporting people. And but of course we've got to be mindful when we do those sorts of things. But yeah, that's a big one, I mean, trying to, I think in some ways, also to go back to some of the previous conversations that have been had, that often from a sort of a Western or Pākehā worldview, it's hard to find the language to talk about these issues and what we need to do to change. And I think from my experience, there's some, like from Te Ao Māori, and using concepts like whakapapa, it becomes really clear and really easy to talk about why these things are a problem, and you know, what our connection is, both individually to the rest of the world. So yeah, I just think more of these kinds of conversations where we're listening and we're also trying to implement different ways of doing things is just really, really important.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. And for you, Paul, I sort of think of that disabled community, that they'd have a real sense of what is a safe place for them.
I guess so. I mean, ableism exists within society, and I think in terms of the climate justice type movement, I think a number of disabled people, you know, when we've been seen to look at individual actions, have felt a bit as if they're being judged by that. You know, if you've got people who actually, you know, aren't in control of some of the things that they buy, aren't cleaning their own houses, someone maybe, you know, they may have a care support person who does that lack of choice and control. And I think more disabled, I mean, that's where I think we come together, and that, you know, disabled people are talking about choice and control, but what does that really mean, and how does that then tie in with kind of climate justice? I think is quite an important topic, and a way that where we can kind of meet together. So yeah, sure. I mean, disabled people, I think, you know, are concerned about being judged if we see this as an individual kind of problem and an individual solutions and fixes. But I think if we have the coming together and a kind of understanding that, you know, it's not only about what individuals do, but there are wider societal and system things that need to be changed, then I think yeah, I think we can move forward together.
Thank you, Paul. I've got one more question for all of you before we go to look at the audience's questions, and it's just around well-being and psychological safety for us all. And it's often a prerequisite for a good culture and for innovation and for effective teamwork. But the fact is environmental issues can be really exhausting. You know, the waste just never stops coming. And, you know, if you work at a CRC, it's just absolutely daunting. You clean it up one day and you go back the next day and it's all there again. So, you know, it's really overwhelming. So how do we look after ourselves and how do we look after our people from that well-being point of view? Jackie, would you like to start with that one?
My viewpoint on that would be through relationships. So that well-being, you know, comes through our relationships, you know, that we have with each other, and you know, that keeps us healthy. And I guess for us, when we're providing education, because we're providing it from a Māori worldview, even though we take people through learning what the whakapapa is of the natural resources. So, you know, bauxite makes aluminium and iron ore, black sand makes steel. And so understanding that all of our stuff is made from natural resources, and then we take them through the system of stuff of extraction, production, distribution, consumption, and then disposal. And then we look at the impact of that system on our atua, and that can be really that can be, you know, that can be quite a ride, because you know, when you understand that it's not just the disposal of our products that causes a lot of problems. There's actually 5 different stages where there's lots of energy, lots of pollution, and lots of waste being created. For us, it's the providing that education about our interconnectedness with the environment and learning more about our atua. So I guess coming from that Māori worldview and being really sort of respectful and kind of in awe of our tupuna and how they lived, you know, putting out fishing nets that took 500 people to hold, for example. You know, the way we fished and the way we provided through, you know, sustainably living within the boundaries of the land and the seas around us. So drawing from our stories, the mahi of our ancestors, and learning more about Te Ao Māori is something that is really uplifting and inspiring and helps support environmental action in a positive way, even though there's so much going on, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. Alana, I sense you sort of deal a little bit with this, you know, seeing kind of the environmental damage from dumping and stuff like that around your island, and how distressing that can be for people. How do you look after your community when it comes to that?
Sorry, Green, can you just repeat that again?
Just thinking, you made some comments, you know, about rubbish dumping on the island, and seeing some of your reserves that have been, you know, going through detrimental processes because of it. So I'm wondering, just how do you deal with that stress that people have of kind of trying to do the right thing, but just sort of feeling like it's a bit endless and really hard to get on top of?
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I, you know, touched on when we had tourism here and we noticed a bit more waste being generated. But with COVID being here, it's sort of been a blessing in disguise as well, because we've had our borders shut off to the world. We've just been living as our community of 14,000, I think our population is, and in comparison to a tourism year would get over 110,000 in 1 year. I think that was back in 2019. So we've been able to almost go back to how we used to be before tourism was here. We've been able to get more into growing, into our own home gardening, and really trying to live that basic life, living off our land and cutting back on some of the waste that we used to generate when tourism was here. So being able to experience that has brought us back to how our elders used to live, and it's reminded us, it's been a good reminder of how we can live and the way we can move forward in terms of being, how we can manage our waste better.
Okay, thank you. Has anyone else got any comments, or shall we move to the audience questions? Liam.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of say in response to the feelings of being overwhelmed by a lot of these issues that, you know, I think, again, there's sort of a bit of a stereotype which has some truth to it, that men find it hard to talk about those sorts of feelings. And I've certainly noticed it in myself that if I'm having days where I'm just feeling really depressed about what's, the state of the world, where, I've found it hard to just talk to people about these feelings I'm having, and, how do you deal with it, and how can we understand and feel positive and feel like there are things happening. And so I just really think talking, encouraging people to talk to each other, and I think community, being connected with our local communities is just so important for that well-being, and having people we can call to, having people we can work and take action on as well is so important, and just encouraging men, but just everyone to be willing to talk about these things. And I also feel like, as someone who's really committed to action in my own life, there's also sort of an empowerment that comes from that I have control over a lot of the waste that I produce, and there's a real sense of I'm living with my values, and again, having a community around you who share those values I find personally at times is a really, really positive uplifting thing. So but again, when I'm having those days where I'm feeling down, I think it's really important to have people to talk to and be willing to have those conversations.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. And it's one thing I've noticed too. It's like when you start one thing positive, how quickly you realize it leads into another positive action, or the other positive action just becomes easier. So it's kind of like just getting everyone, or supporting everyone to get on that journey, and then things will just sort of start to unfold for them. Well, that's my hope. Alana, we've got one of our colleagues in the Community Recycling Centres asking a couple of questions, and I think he means generally with the Pacific Islands. He's asking, are the recycling streams being removed from the islands to be recycled? And he's also asking, is glass still going to landfill in the islands? Are you aware of those?
Okay, recycling streams. Okay, sorry. So yeah, at the moment, the only thing we can recycle in terms of being sent back to New Zealand, and they do the recycling for us, is the aluminium cans and the tin cans. Glass is being taken by our landfill, and that is being crushed by our new industrial glass crusher that we have here. The issue with that now is that we have these massive bags of crushed glass, and there's no purpose for it. So now that is just staying up at our landfill, collecting dust, because we don't know what to do with all this crushed glass. We recognize, you could use it for construction, but our collectors on this side would much prefer sand because it is more robust and better to use than the crushed glass. So there's still some serious issues here in terms of how we can go about managing that properly. Plastic bottles, that is our other big issue. We're currently collecting that. New Zealand has stopped receiving it from our end. So that is all being stored up in our landfill as well. So this is why we're trying to encourage our people to make these simple swaps, start thinking about these simple swaps when they're out buying. If you're wanting to buy a plastic bottle, try swap it out, make the decision to make the swap with an aluminium can, because those products can be shipped off our island for some return. So getting that information out there and our people to start making these little lifestyle changes and being conscious consumers.
Thank you, Alana. Another question from a colleague in Gisborne, telling us that there's a strong awareness that mana whenua should, where possible, lead kaitiakitanga initiatives. We need to ensure that the steering groups will be led by local mana whenua, but this can exclude passionate Pākehā people. Also, mana whenua are also generally overwhelmed, and we know this, there's a lot going on and sometimes under-resourced, and there can be multiple things that they need to set priorities on. So the question is, how can Pākehā people sensitively be involved in zero waste culture change and initiating community resource recovery? And I think it's in that context when they're acknowledging that the manawa whenua should rightly be reading those groups. Jackie, are you able to address that?
I'll try my best. I think it comes down to there's there's no sharing of power. So Māori have not been given a seat at the table where the decisions are being made. So for me, I feel like the work for Pākehā is to advocate for change, to allow power sharing, and I guess in terms of like if you've got a situation where it would be better for the local hapu or the local iwi to lead the development, say, of a community resource recovery centre, I guess I would say the best approach is to create relationships and get to know people and look at how you can support what's happening, because once a relationship is formed, then trust and understanding is built, and then the ability to work together effectively for great outcomes is that's increased. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah. Thank you, Jackie. Another question here, do all the panelists, do the people, the culture, do you think that they're ahead of the government and regulations or behind it in terms of waste minimisation? People power, I hope. But yeah, you got a comment on that, Liam? You're involved in that central government space.
Oh, well, I think it's pretty obvious. Government is way behind.
Yeah.
The culture of where people are at. I mean, you've seen that with people have been calling for even something as simple as the plastic bag ban. That campaign was going for so long before it actually happened, and and it even took the big supermarket chains to take action before the government was willing to do that. So yeah, I think the government is never leading, always responsive, and could be a lot more catching up with where the public awareness is.
Paul, did you have something you'd like to say?
No, I don't. Nothing to add to there really. I think people are way ahead of where the government are at. But I do think I think we also do need to lobby and push government to make changes. As I say, there are real barriers to disabled people sometimes being involved in zero waste stuff because, you know, because of the products they're made to take, just because, you know, things are cheaper or easier, or the control you have over your support workers, some of these kind of things. So I think government need a bit of pushing around quite a lot of this.
And I did have somebody here, but their comments disappeared, but just asking if we could share any resources around the disabled sector and how they can be more involved in recycling. This is somebody who had MS, so perhaps we could post that somewhere. So Lana, when tourism does return to the islands, and visitors need to be more aware of waste that they bring with them and leave behind on the islands, how to deal with it. How big is this a proportion of landfill waste on an island from tourism? And I know a lot of islands are dealing with this, and there's obviously a lot of education needs to be kind of for those people even before they come to the Cooks, especially the tourists, of this is the way we behave here, and this is something you need to bring and pay attention to when you come there. Have you had thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess the first form of contact that our guests would make is with their accommodation. So we need to really touch base with our accommodations here in Rarotonga and the Cook Islands to make sure that information is dispersed to their guests before they even arrive on our shores. So we currently have here at the Pukaria Society a Manatiaki Eco certification scheme, where these accommodations can sign on board and be a part, become accredited to this eco certification scheme. And if they become a part of it, they get this credential tick to show that they're doing these eco-friendly movements, practices to be conscious accommodations. And part of that is, yes, you have to inform your guests before they even arrive on our shores of, for example, being sunblock conscious, to not have oxybenzone, to be oxybenzone free, to your waste, or the waste that you bring here will stay here or you take it back home with you. Just examples like that.
Yeah. Got a question here for Alana and Jackie. How do you approach or engage with people in the community who refuse to consider changing their wasteful habits? Example, the aunties who always use Glad wrap and don't want to change that. Jackie, you got an auntie like that?
Yeah, I know exactly that feeling. When I was at a tangi and it was like, can you wrap this, babe? You know, handing me the Glad wrap. I'm like, don't you know? So nothing, I guess, where we come from is Manaakitanga first and foremost. So we, it's that looking after the mana of people first, and that's always the way it will be. So it can only happen, like we don't make people wrong or put people down. We don't come, or say this is the way you should do it. So we facilitate and support. So there's no easy answer to the uncles that have been burning their waste for decades, and there's just the provision. How I think of zero waste is that we don't have to educate and explain to everyone how to do things. We just need to provide them with a higher quality choice, so that is better than the one they've got. So, back in the day, we might have had a polystyrene cup, and it had a hot drink in it, and you could feel the heat through the cup, and then we use a real cup, and it's a better experience than that polystyrene cup, or the water at an event, and buying plastic bottled water, or else being at an event in the summer, and you can fill up your reusable water bottle with chilled water, and there's flavorings as well. So to me, it's like we don't need to educate everyone necessarily. We just need to provide a higher standard, a better experience for people that is better than the single-use option that they're used to. And just, I guess it's also modeling and education and conversations and building relationships.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. And I was also reminded in another one of the workshops how, you know, a lot of these things are modern inventions, and we actually used to do things much better. There didn't used to be landfill back in the 1960s like there is now. So it's just kind of reminding us that we did used to do things really well. Got another question here, which is interesting, is how do we transform our country to have the culture like the Scandinavian countries regarding waste minimisation? Seems to be that their culture to recycle and care and believe in waste management. And I was talking to a German friend of mine recently about that, and she said, oh, it's just with Germans, we're told to do something that we do it. You know, there's this behavior, they feel like they're compelled to kind of follow the rules. And I compared that to my West Auckland culture, whereas kind of like if you tell us to do something, we're going to give you the finger, you know, and do the complete opposite. So it is a little bit of a culture thing. So would anyone like to kind of comment on that? How about you, Liam?
Well, I can't say I know many Scandinavian people, and you know what the culture is really like there. So yeah, it's hard to know how we emulate that culture. I feel like in some ways, you know, we should be looking more locally, you know, and looking to examples like Parakore that are, you know, really indigenous ways of looking at this issue and making it really relevant to where we are. So yeah, so not just for Māori looking at that, but for Pākehā as well, and being willing to accept that. So and yeah, and I don't know, I think New Zealand has, you know, we have often had this kind of very outward looking focus that, you know, we compare ourselves to the rest of the world on the global stage, and in doing that, I think we sometimes neglect the really powerful things that are happening here locally. So a bit more of that, I reckon.
Yeah, nice, Liam. I think that's one of the things that's coming across for me really strong, is that in Aotearoa and in our Pacific Islands, we do have a leading culture that is very sensitive and aware of this kind of the spiritual values that should be the primary way we're led forward in these things. So it's just kind of how do we listen better to people? Look, I'm gonna start to wrap up now. I'm just wondering if any of you would like some final comments or something that's pressing for you before I hand back to Daughter.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. So on you go, Jackie, and then I can.
I was just going to say, like, imagine if we had hundreds and hundreds of community resource recovery centres throughout Aotearoa, and every suburb of every city had one, all the towns had resource recovery centres, so we could enable reuse. The waste hierarchy goes, you know, refuse and everything, repair and all that, reduce, reuse and recycle. And like Hannah always says, it's not a ladder, it's a sieve, put everything in there. So obviously there's been so much energy and resource put into recycling with curbside collections and all this talk about infrastructure, and that's because it's, you know, putting those costs of recycling onto the people instead of, you know, the companies taking the responsibility. So I think community resource recovery centres also enable the development of understanding and knowledge and skills about how to move forward to a zero waste society, a low waste generating society. So I think each community can decide, you know, pathways forward for their own community as well as contribute to the national conversations about where we want central government to go. And I think we should be collaborative, like Liam was saying, and strongly advocate collectively to central government about what we expect from them, because they're working for us.
Thank you, Jackie. And to you, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. So I think the really important message is, climate justice and social justice go together. I think that's important. I think in terms of disabled people, I think disabled people are really innovative. We navigate every day a disabling world, a world that isn't made and designed for us to function in it properly. And so actually we do have a lot of solutions if we're given that kind of choice and control. And I think that's really important, that when working with disabled people, that disabled people need to have the lead there. That disabled people, as I say, are really innovative, because every day we're looking at things that don't work for us and coming up with solutions. And what did we talk about a minute ago? Better listening.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Paul. Look, much gratitude to all of you. It's been a lovely session. I've learned lots, and go well. Over to you, daughter.
Thank you guys. I really love that this is the session that we're ending the live part of the summit with. I think that there are some really important challenges raised in the session, particularly around equity and also around where we look for solutions. But I also think there's been some really valuable kind of connection and conversation that hopefully is the beginning of a thing that we can continue doing. So thank you guys so much. I'm really, really grateful for you taking the time to share with us. So that's kind of it for the session, and also for the summit for this year, which we've got 2 more days of video content going up onto the website, and I really encourage you to go and check out all of those, as well as the videos of the sessions that we've had over the last few days. The summit website will remain up, so it's going to be a resource for a long time to come, I hope. And we'll definitely look at doing this again in some form. I just need to say some kind of final thank yous. We've had some really amazing support from some organisations around the world, so the Zero Waste International Alliance, and also Gaia, the Alternatives to Incineration organisation. So thank you to those guys, and also to our sponsors, who are really the reason that it's a free event. So they are Auckland Council, Envision Consulting, Waste Not Consulting, who are 2 really great consultants that we have lots to do with, and then also Rothbury Insurance Brokers. And that might seem like a bit of an odd match, but Rothbury are supportive of our buyers group, and have been doing some really amazing work for the network. So I definitely think you should go and check out all of our supporters on the Summit page and connect with the work that they're doing. And so finally, I'm just gonna hand over to Jackie, and she can close the event with a karakia. So over to you, Jackie.
Kia ora, daughter. And I'm just going to be a little bit greedy and just make one more point, and that's just that waste to energy is not a zero waste solution. It's still a linear solution of making stuff and then throwing it away and it being burnt to create energy. So it's a linear system. And of course, we all know that we need to model papatūānuku, and we need to go to closed loop systems. So I just wanted to make sure that that's clear. And mihi to you, Paul, for your perspective this morning, and to you, Alana, from the Cook Islands, and Liam, kia ora, and kia ora, Green John, for your facilitation. Yesterday, the 5th of November in 1881, there was an invasion of Parihaka by 1,600 troops. So most of the village was destroyed. women were raped, the people were dispersed, and the leaders, Te Whiti and Tohu, were imprisoned. So I just wanted to, give a little bit of a history, and send aroha, I guess, to things that have happened here in Aotearoa in years gone by. And the karakia that I'm going to close with is from 1884, when Tawhiao, the Māori king, was going to England to see Queen Victoria because he wanted to talk about the tiriti and everything that was happening here in Aotearoa, Parihaka, the land wars, etc. And so he went to one of his tūpuna oranga whenua and he said, can you give me a karakia, for me to take on my journey when I go to England? And this is the karakia that was given. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa paunamu te moana, kia tiri te kārohirohi I mua I tō huarahi. So, kia hora te marino, like may it all be nice and flat, meaning, may peace be widespread. Kia whakapaunamu te moana, may the sea glisten like green stone. Kia tiri te kārohirohi I mua I tō huarahi, and may the shimmer of light guide you on your way. And he also said, ko tō hoa haere ko te rangi Māori, and may your travelling friend be peace. So those are the words to not only close this session, but close the live sessions for this summit. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora, Jackie. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you very much.
Cheers.